Hi there, welcome to the SparrowCast series where we help you to connect the dots. Take home the best ideas from industry experts and thought leaders right here on SparrowCast by SurveySparrow. Today, we have with us Kirsty Traill, Vice President of Customer Support at Hootsuite, the world's most widely used social media relationship platform. Kirsty has over 19 years of international experience gained from senior sales and marketing, operations, and general management roles in the US, Canada, and New Zealand, where she has a track record of effective leadership and business transformation. Welcome to the show, Kirsty. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Right. Today, Kirsty will educate us on how to manage social customer support. Over to you, Kirsty.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. So surprisingly enough, despite the pervasiveness of social media and the increase in the importance of responding to customers in a very timely manner across social media, with our friends at Twitter telling us that most customers expect a response within an hour, shockingly, when we look at data from Forrester, one of the industry analyst companies, they let us know that over 50% of customers actually don't receive a response for up to 3 days on social media. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time today educating and talking to your audience about how to really start thinking about social customer support via this framework that we've developed. So the first step is really to identify, audit, and understand where and how your customers are looking for customer support. And I'll go into each one in a little bit more detail. The second is to integrate social into your existing customer service structure by deploying, obviously, a social relationship platform across your team and organization. The third step is really educating your team to engage on social for success, obviously training them on platform, social media guidelines, and tone of voice. We then recommend that you unify your social strategy across your organization. And lastly, we'll give you some tips on how to delight and proactively be part of a larger conversation. So let's take a little bit more of a deeper dive into each one. So step one, when you're thinking about identifying, auditing and understanding where and how your customers are engaging on social media, the first step is to really audit your organization's social media footprint. So look at how many social media accounts are currently being used and who across the organization has responsibility for actually monitoring and managing these different accounts. We also work with our friends over at Proofpoint to understand if there are, or ZeroFox, to understand if there are any fraudulent or unauthorized accounts that might be harming or distracting your audience. And what's really interesting to know is when we actually did this work with a large manufacturer in Europe, they found that there was a fraudulent account which had all of their logos, had actually garnered 10,000 followers and was engaging with customers on behalf of the brand. So we helped them to reach out and shut that down. So it's really important to kind of understand that and work to ultimately rationalize that into a manageable number. And again, some research here from Altimeter, the average enterprise has 178 social media profiles, which is a large number of profiles. So how can you move that into a much more manageable number of social media profiles? The second step really is around integrating social into your existing customer support structure. So here we really want to make sure that you determine which social networks you want to engage with your customers for support. And if you're a smaller company or an earlier stage company, we really recommend focusing on one social network where you can really commit to providing excellent customer service. So for example, and one easy way to do that is to actually understand on which social networks and how your customers are engaging with you already today. So for example, if your customers are primarily engaging with you on Pinterest, then it probably makes sense to start with Pinterest. If it's Facebook, start with Facebook, and Twitter, and sort of so on, Instagram and so forth. So start with one social network and then just slowly start to expand. But make sure you're actually using information about how and where your customers are engaging with you already to help guide that decision. The second thing to do is then to really understand or determine whether you want to use a company handle or create a dedicated help handle or page. And our recommendation is, wherever possible, we recommend that you actually create a separate help handle or page for engaging with customers when it comes to social customer support. And the reason for that is it helps to keep your main company handle or page clear or free of any kind of negative chatter or feedback from your customers, and allows you to manage that more from a brand standpoint. But the second and more important reason is that it allows your customer support team to actually reach out and manage your customer support via social media in a much faster manner by encouraging your customers to engage with you on a specific support handle. And what I think is a really interesting statistic here is a statistic from NM Insight. 30% of customers would actually rather receive customer support on social media than contact a company by phone. So think a little bit further about how can you potentially be proactive, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The third step is really education, and this is educating the internal team. So, because we're a social media platform, we recommend that you provide, obviously we recommend that you use a platform to engage on social media. If you're using a platform, it makes obvious sense that providing platform training to ensure that your team has widespread usage and adoption is really, really important. If you're not using a platform, we definitely recommend that you create some social media policies and guidelines so that your team know and understand what is and isn't out of scope, and what isn't okay when it comes to engaging with customers over social media, both on behalf of the company and also from their own personal accounts. You'd be surprised how many times people can actually step slightly outside the lines when it comes to their personal social media. So it's important that your employees understand what they should and shouldn't be talking about on social media when it comes to your company and their personal opinion. The third thing is to provide a framework for a really consistent tone of voice. So if you have a strong company brand or tone of voice, making sure that your employees actually know and understand what that tone of voice is so that they can engage with your customers using that. Our tip here is really to avoid any kind of scripting or over engineering of the way that your the way that your agents engage with your customers, because that can start to sound overly robotic. And one of the benefits of social media is that it's a very natural channel in which to engage, and people really look for that authentic human connection. Here, another statistic from Altimeter Research Group. Surprisingly, only 18%, so less than 1 in 5 organisations, state that their employees are aware of their social media policies and procedures, which is a pretty low number if you ask me. Then step 4 is to unify your social strategy across the organisation. So we know through our client base and also through some data that was conducted by Altimeter that on average there are up to 13 different teams or departments engaging with a customer at any given point in time. And if you don't have a unified strategy, then ultimately it's your customer that suffers, because they don't see these 13 different teams and departments all trying to engage with your customer. They just see your one company or brand. So if something fails, they don't see all of these different teams. That all they're realizing is that there's lots of different people reaching out to them in a really inconsistent and incompatible way, which can be really confusing for customers. And as a result of this, because there's confusion between teams and departments and who's responsible for picking up which type of social media engagements and where the responsibilities lie for responding, what's actually happening is we're seeing social media interactions actually fall through the gaps. And as a result, 61% of companies are actually not responding to customers. And so they're really left kind of hanging when they've come to social media to get a really quick response. So our recommendation here is to establish a workflow of who should be responding to which types of inquiries, how will you assign messages within your team and across teams and organizations. Should it go to your marketing team? Should it go to your customer support team? Should something be sent to your product team if it's an escalation or some kind of bug or product outage? And making sure that there's clearly defined roles and responsibilities, as well as service level agreements for each type of interaction. So a high level outage or some kind of bug obviously has a much faster response time than something that might be a general inquiry from an analyst or a journalist, which needs to be routed through to the public relations department. And then the last step is really around delighting your customers and being part of a larger conversation. So really proactively reaching out to customers to kind of nip any nascent issues in the bud before they escalate into a full-blown crisis. And we've all seen, those take place before, and definitely want to make sure that you're actively listening to what your customers are saying about you, because sometimes they'll be talking about you, but they may not actually be mentioning you or talking directly to you. So if you're able to listen and monitor what your customer comments are, even if they're not directed to your official accounts, then you're actually able to reach out to these customers before the issue starts to escalate. And interestingly, when you actually do that as a company, a third of negative reviews are then actually updated to be either deleted or positive, and 55% of unhappy customers are actually more willing to stay with the current company if they attempted to reach out and solve their issue. So those are my tips in terms of social customer support. And I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. That was absolutely insightful. I'm sure our audience also felt likewise. Let me sum up the key takeaways from our session here with Kirsty today. 1. Identify or audit where and how your customers are engaging with your brand. 2. Integrate social into your existing customer support structure. Number 3. Educate your internal teams on the tools and social media guidelines and policies. 4. Unify your social strategy across the organization. 5. Delight your customers by proactively reaching out. Was there anything else, Kirsty? Did I sum it all right?
That sounds perfect.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. Once again, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights. A final question for our guests here. Did you have an opportunity to participate in any of the SurveySparrow surveys?
Me? Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Can you share your experience of filling our surveys here, please?
Yes, sure. It was very easy to use and very interactive and very intuitive.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind words. That definitely keeps us going. Thanks again, Kirsty, and we shall see you again in the next SparrowCast.